Good morning, color students. I just want to walk you through our co-primaries and how to make prismatic colors and then how to desaturate them into muted colors and then eventually into chromatic grays. You can see how I set up my palette. I put white in the corner. I put my Payne's gray and my burnt umber over here. I'm going to mix them together to become my chromatic dark, which you should have on your palette every day. I have my yellow light and my yellow deep, my scarlet and my alizarin, my phthalo blue, my ultramarine and my phthalo blue. Now these are the co-primaries. Remember, I said each of these colors has a bias. It leans towards one of the secondary hues. Yellow light has a bias towards green. Yellow deep has a bias towards orange. Naphthol red light or cadmium red light has a bias towards orange. Alizarin, permanent alizarin, has a bias towards violet. Ultramarine also has a bias towards violet. And phthalo blue has a bias towards green. So let me, just for a minute, set this up. You want to make sure you have plenty of paper towel on hand and a nice, clean water container. You want to change the water often. I'm going to mix together my chromatic darks to make my nice neutral, quote unquote, black. Now I'm trying to make it as neutral as possible. Eventually I can make it lean towards blue to be cooler or towards brown to be warmer. But there it is, there's my chromatic dark. Just have it leave it there in the corner. Now I'm going to make a very prismatic green. And to make a prismatic green, I'm going to take yellow light and phthalo blue because they both have a bias towards green. It always makes sense to start with your less dominant hue, which in this case would be the yellow. Add the phthalo and mix them together. Now I've made a very, sorry, let me get a little closer for you. Prismatic green. I can paint out a swatch of that and show it to you here. Again, you want to make your swatches as big as possible because you will be using them for projects throughout the semester. And you don't want to do a lot of remixing. Now, I'm going to take my water container, I'm going to clean my brush thoroughly. And now, why don't we try to make a green that is definitely not prismatic, right? So we'll say a prismatic green is vivid. Let's make a dull green. And the best way to make a dull green would be to start with the opposite combination of yellow and blue. If I take my yellow that doesn't lean towards green and my blue that doesn't lean towards green, you can clearly see as I mix them together, they are not creating a vivid color combination. It's quite dull. And here, I'll paint out my muted, instantly muted green, if you can see the difference. Now I just would like to try to walk you through making muted color and chromatic grays. Let's be clear, muted colors are rich but softened colors. You can do one of two things to make a muted color. First of all, I've made a muted color here by creating the wrong combination of yellow and blue. This yellow has a bias towards orange, and this blue has a bias towards violet. The complements of those colors instantly desaturate this color. This is called toning. Another way to take a prismatic color and make it into a muted color would be to tint. Once you add white to a prismatic color, even though it may seem really, really vivid, it's no longer prismatic. I can give you a nice example here in my swatch bag by looking at some swatches from yellow. I have my prismatic yellow and my prismatic yellow deep. And this yellow, although quite vivid, is not prismatic. It's slightly duller than the original prismatic color. Once I add white to color, it's no longer prismatic. I've tinted it. So now I've created a tinted, got some more paper towel, bear with me. I've created a tinted green, which is now a muted color. It's one muted color of many that I can make. I can also do the opposite. I can take, let me go back and make that original prismatic green again, if I have enough room. Prismatic green again. There's that prismatic green. I've tinted it with white. I've toned it by putting other color or its complement into it. And now I'm just going to shade it. So now I've made a darker, add a little more blue so I don't quite lose it and turn it into a chromatic gray. Now I've made a darker muted color. All of your muted colors should not just have white in them. They should have a number of different combinations. Well, that's a little thin. Sorry, my brush must have been wet. Try to not let your brush be too wet. Really dry it in between. So here I have made a prismatic green, a muted green by tinting, a muted green by toning, which is the wrong combination, the wrong combination of yellow and blue, or adding its complement. The complement of green is red. So I've added a yellow that has red in it, and actually a blue that has red in it. So I've toned, and I've shaded by adding chromatic dark. Now, just one last thing I'd like to walk you through. While this paint is like this, I can take it further and turn it into a chromatic gray. So let me show you how to do that. Say I take this color, for example. My brush is dirty. Let's add a ton of white. And you should really use your palette knife when mixing these colors. I'm just doing this for the sake of time. I've added much more white. I've probably turned it into a very light muted color. But if I just add a little bit of red, I don't want to add too much so that I lose the hue of green. But now I've created a chromatic gray of green orangin. Worked it out. Chromatic gray of green origin. I added the complement, I added white, I tinted and toned it. Now, I could even throw some shade. Throw some shade in there. Let's see if I can keep it green. It's sort of hard to read its original hue. Let me dip into some of these. See, by the time you get to chromatic gray, you can sort of add all the ingredients in the cupboard into the mix. What I'm gonna do. That's why I say, make your prismatics, turn them into muted colors, then turn them into chromatic grays. There's a good one. You brush that out. Keep going, make it a little darker. Make another one out of this. Whip up all this muted color into chromatic gray. There's another one. Let me add some white, see if I can keep it green. With chromatic grays, we want to see subtle yet discernible hue presence. We want to be able to say, like, I think the recipe, the original hue in that recipe was green, but it's hard to read it as green, if that makes sense. So here I have prismatic green, muted green, muted green, muted green, and a series of chromatic gray greens. I can even make a nice darker one here. I think I'll do that actually, just so I can round out my, let me take the wrong blue and the wrong yellow and take some more of that, I'm such a mess, apologies. Take some more of that dark. Let's make a nice, rich, dark, chromatic gray. There. It's very, very hard to read the hue in this green, but it is there. So here we go. I have a nice variety of greens. The hue is green, The value is broad. I have dark values and light values. Dark values, lighter values. I could even do one lighter. And I have the 3 strata of saturation: prismatic, muted, and chromatic gray. Okay, good luck mixing. Do that with all of the hues. Broad hue range, broad value range, broad saturation. Good luck.